Observe the way free societies collapse. They are rarely overrun by military force. The surrender occurs invisibly, at the level of human perception. Education researcher Christine Jones, building on the scholarship of Daniel N. Robinson, maps exactly how this process unfolds. She notes that classical citizens evaluated their world by asking a rigorous question: is this true? Today, that reflex has faded, replaced by a different metric. Does this explain things well? When a society stops seeking objective truth and starts prioritizing useful explanations, it undergoes a systemic capture. The population has been redescribed into compliance. The American founding relied on a specific type of citizen. This was someone who could answer, what is a man? What is a right? And what is law? Without hesitation. Looking at the Declaration of Independence, the phrasing is precise. They held these truths to be self-evident. These were recognitions grounded in reality. This capacity to recognize objective reality is known as ontological literacy. It required active, deliberate formation. That formation was built on 3 pillars: grammar, ordered to meaning, ensuring words tied to real reference; logic, ordered to truth, maintaining non-contradiction; and moral instruction, cultivating restraint and virtue. The intended output of this structure was a moral agent, accountable within objective reality. Legal documents alone cannot sustain a constitutional republic. The system relies on a population trained to anchor those written concepts to an absolute reality. This foundational literacy vanished as the institutions responsible for transmitting it failed in sequence. First, parents ceased transmitting stable categories of reality to their children, breaking the earliest link in the chain. Next, schools abandoned moral formation, replacing it with pure methodology and skill acquisition. Finally, the clergy shifted away from teaching moral ontology, adopting therapeutic or symbolic language from the pulpit. The resulting generation inherited a hollow structure. They possessed the vocabulary of liberty, but lacked the underlying metaphysics to support it. Looking at the text of the Constitution, you can see the remnants of this vocabulary. Modern citizens repeat phrases like "we the people" and "inalienable rights," but they have lost the ability to defend what makes those concepts real. Once those foundational pillars rot, objective reality begins to feel interpretive. The population becomes ontologically illiterate, leaving them vulnerable to new systems of control. Without a firm grounding in reality, basic definitions become negotiable. Stable categories turn fluid. When a population can no longer recognize truth, they shift to interpreting it. They seek a framework to provide the logic they can no longer find in reality itself. Authority moves from the world to whoever supplies the dominant framework. Under the founding model, a moral agent makes choices grounded in reality. The interpretive framework views the human as a unit inside a system, merely responding to inputs. Systemic models like class analysis, systems thinking, and incentive modeling move in to provide that explanation. To a public no longer trained in formal logic, these models are deeply appealing. They feel precise, scientific, and actionable. But a hidden substitution has occurred. Human agency has been downgraded to mere behavior. Once citizens are viewed as predictable, adjustable variables, the nature of governance mutates. The rule of law dissolves into the management of behavior. Why would an intelligent public adopt systems that strip away their own agency? They fall for the seduction of the partial truth. These frameworks succeed because their surface-level observations are accurate. States do exploit their citizens. Financial incentives shape human actions. Distinct social groups clash over resources. The error lies in treating a narrow, partial observation as the absolute ground of explanation for all human activity. A properly formed citizen evaluates these truths by placing them within a larger moral reality. An unformed citizen accepts them as the entire explanation. The exact moment an ideological frame replaces reality is when a society accepts a partial description as the whole truth. These interpretive frameworks rely on one tactical advantage to secure dominance: their presentation. They never announce themselves as ideological alternatives or philosophical replacements. Instead, they wear a disguise, presenting as neutral analytical methods. By framing themselves as technical upgrades, they bypass a society's natural intellectual resistance. People do not put up a defense against something marketed as a better, more efficient way to understand the world. You cannot fight an ideological invasion if you lack the foundational training to see what is being replaced. Formed citizens understood a rigorous rule. If you misdiagnose the basic nature of man, all downstream institutions will collapse. An ontologically illiterate population evaluates new ideas by their immediate usefulness, rhetorical clarity, or emotional resonance. Because they rely on this shallow metric, massive reality-altering frameworks are adopted without objection. The true societal cost of these frameworks remains obscured. It is completely invisible at the point of entry. When a society judges systems only by how they feel in the moment, it sacrifices its ability to trace the fatal implications of those systems down the line. The absolute core deficiency driving this massive societal shift is the loss of the training required to detect substitution. They failed to notice description replacing ontology, analytical methods replacing reality, and management systems replacing the moral order. These models lead to diverging paths of governance. The original moves from ontology to law, relying on personal responsibility. The new moves from frameworks to management, requiring endless calibration. Here lies the ultimate vulnerability. Because an unformed public cannot detect the shift, they lack the capacity to resist it. In this dynamic, ideological reframing is not perceived as negation. The substitution of agency is not perceived as a loss, and the expansion of control is never perceived as control. A constitutional order demands citizens who can see reality and refuse imposed frames. Once that capacity is gone, a population doesn't need to be conquered. It just needs to be managed.